Welcome, everybody, to the Thrive Together Masterclass podcast. I'm Kathleen Metcalf, the founder of Cambium, and we have this podcast once a month in 2025, matching to our success habit for May 2025 is win or learn. And when we came up with that topic and we decided to have this podcast, I had one invitation I wanted to send out to my dear friend and colleague, David Breckheimer from Cultivate Wins, be the guest to talk about his experience with this topic, how it applies to life, love, business, and everyday occurrences. So we're going to talk philosophy and practicality so that we can really integrate win or learn into our everyday lives. So welcome, David.
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you always.
So we can get geeky, but I love that you said that we might just get a little philosophical because you know that, I mean, this may be 45 minutes, this may be an hour, but you and I could talk for 3 to 5 hours.
Oh, yes, or days.
So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
if we had your beautiful wife cooking for us, we could talk for days.
Yeah, wherever you want to take this.
So let's start out with some of your story about you named your business Cultivate Wins. Let's start there. Tell us a little about the evolution of how that came to be.
Okay. I had to take a deep breath on that one. Okay. Because you asked me before we started recording, because you know that my story, as yours, as all of ours, is fairly personal.
Yes.
And it's not usually something that I just focus on and share and everything else like that. I'm not here to use my story as some type of marketing tactic or anything else like that. But as you shared, our stories have impact.
Yes.
And sometimes they explain the reason why we do certain things. So my story is, and just full disclosure, I think I'm going to be 54 this year. I say I think. I can get out a calculator, but I think that's pretty close. I think I'm going to be about 54 this year. I grew up with a lot of depression. I was very suicidal, blah, 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 blah. I can go on and on and on. So we don't need to go into real depth on that, but just know that that was my reality.
Yeah.
And when people would talk about, let's talk about what's your 1-year goal, what's your 3-year goal, what's your 5-year goal, I was just trying to make it through the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's reality. Okay. So my goal would be, how do I make it through the next 5 minutes? And so I'd be driving home from work and thinking, rather than making a bad decision when I come home, and it's the last decision I'm ever going to make, it was the mini wins that kept me alive, because it was a mini win of, okay, so if I can get home before my wife, what could I do to make sure that she doesn't have to do it? Could I just get home literally and just take out the garbage before she does?
Yeah.
It's that petty that I was at, that taking out the garbage before my wife did, that was a goal.
Yeah. But it's a fundamental, right, that you have learned to cultivate. So
the situation was this. I had heard Les Brown say something that literally changed my life. Now, granted, I'm going to be 54 this week, and I put that in context due to the fact that I married my high school sweetheart. So I was 15 when we met.
Amazing.
Okay. So when I'm talking about this, I was in a deep depression throughout high school, throughout my 20s, all of that. And I'm just working on survival. What I lacked was a thing that I called peace and contentment. I had no idea even what that meant. I had no reference to it. I did not have peace and contentment. Okay. So I heard Les Brown do an hour-long talk. And in this hour-long talk, there's 55 seconds that changed my life. That's part of where my company name came from. But in those 55 seconds, here's what he shared. He said, if you figure out what you really want, what do you really, really want? What are you lacking? What do you need? What do you want? And if you focus on reading one book, one new book, every single month on that topic for the next 5 years, you'll become the top 5% experts in the world in that area. Right time, right place, right person, right tone, right everything. that was what I needed at that moment. And I said, what do I really want? And what I want to find is just peace and contentment.
All right.
So I committed to reading one book on peace and contentment every single month for 5 years. And anybody who knows me and knows a bit more about my story, there's not a chance under God's green earth when I started that I was going to stop at one book a month. Okay.
And stop at 5 years.
And I certainly didn't stop after 5 years. Okay. So here's the situation. If you read that much on peace and contentment, that intently, I would challenge anybody to tell me I'm wrong on this next statement. You cannot read that many books for that length of time and do that in-depth study on peace and contentment and not have these other things thrown in your face over and over and over and over and over. You cannot study peace and contentment and you don't get the topics of joy, gratitude, compassion, and empathy thrown in your face nonstop.
Right, because it's all layered.
It's all one whole. So what ended up happening is my whole life became about peace, contentment, joy, gratitude, compassion, and empathy. Now, then I read, and this is not about getting biblical because you know the words that I'm about to say, is that I saw a verse. So first it was Les Brown, changed my life. This is all where Cultivate Wins came from. All of a sudden, he showed me that if I wanted peace and contentment, I could cultivate it. I could do the work. I could treat peace and contentment as a learnable skill. Oh, that was so empowering. And then for Pete's sakes, I read the Bible, which I've read this verse 5 million times and never, ever heard it this way until after I had started doing the studies.
Right.
So there was something that came before this, but made this open up to me. And Paul is in prison, potentially on a death sentence. Probably not a place you feel a lot of peace and contentment.
Right.
You and I, right before this call, we were talking about I used to do prison ministry and I would go into prisons and everything, okay? And he said, how grateful I am, how praise the Lord that you are concerned about me again. Okay, so get past all the spiritual stuff for just a moment. Get past anything spiritual in this verse. He does not say that God gifted him with peace and contentment. And this guy gives credit to God for everything good in his life.
But instead,
he said, I know you have always been concerned for me, but for a while you didn't have a chance to help me. He's talking to the people he's writing to. And here's where it all changed. He said, not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to get along happily, whether I have much or little. The key phrase there, I have learned. I'm like, wait, whoa, what did he say? And then the next sentence, I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of and he goes on, but he keeps saying, I have learned. And I'm like, wait a minute. So he cultivated peace and contentment. This is a guy that does nothing but give credit elsewhere.
And what is that verse for listeners who might want to read that for themselves?
That is Philippians 4:11. Okay. So all of a sudden, I got to come up with a company name. And I'm all about, now you'll see why my story has anything to do with my company name, is my survival for a period of time was not about 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals and wins.
Right.
It was about mini wins. I mean, so many, so minute. So I'm all about the mini wins. Okay. And then I started seeing the wins aren't just because I was gifted or blessed with the win. It is my job and I have the responsibility.
Yeah.
Now, this is empower and it's personal, a personal responsibility to cultivate those wins.
Yeah.
And so my philosophy is I have personal responsibility. And if I want to win, which for a while was just about survival, versus winning and having everything that I've got right now with a great family and great relationships and financially things are great and company's great, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I have both a responsibility and the honor that I actually get to cultivate those.
Yes.
And so the name of the company became Cultivate Wins because that was empowering. That was an empowering concept for me in every aspect of my life. If I want a great marriage, I want to win in marriage. I don't even know why people don't automatically think about that. I want to win in other areas of my life, but win in your marriage, win in your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I could cultivate that.
And how old were you when you created Cultivate Wins? How many years ago did that happen?
So my mom and my wife would say, probably back when I was in junior high or high school. Okay. My mom says you were just always an old soul. Okay. So I thought very deeply like this even when I was young.
Yes.
But at the same time, I didn't know how to use all of it and everything else like that. So it wasn't until later. So I got in the real estate industry per se, mortgage and real estate and all that back in 97.
Okay.
Okay. Cultivate Wins as its own thing was about 6 years ago. Okay.
I just wanted to show the span,
Yeah. 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 This
right?
is a
From
journey.
learning some of these concepts, applying
Yeah.
them to your life, studying,
Yeah.
and then actually having 6 years ago, which puts you in your late 40s,
Yeah.
being able to name your business the thing
Yeah.
that you've been living all these years.
Okay. So I love that you pointed that out because this has been a long journey. But what I studied a few years ago, which we won't go into here, but the other thing that I studied was how many people that we know that are household names
Yeah.
more or less didn't get started on what we know them for until after their 40s.
Yes. I love that you did that research.
Okay.
More.
And it's big names. It is big names. Okay. Unbelievable. Okay. Unbelievable. These are household names. These are things that you drive by in every town and you see just driving down the street. And that owner didn't get started till after he was 40. That owner didn't get started till after he was 50. That owner, not even until after 60. There are so many things out there that people didn't even remotely dream of in their 20s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
And now what we know them for, that came later on in their life. So cultivating wins has nothing to do with where you are in your stage of life.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit because,
Woo!
so thank you for sharing,
Yes.
some of the intimate elements of your story, because I know that's also important because everybody's story can make an impact.
Okay.
And the real estate industry has been through a lot in the last few years, right? It's been kind of rough sometimes. And right now, right, the economy and the world is looking a little wild
Yep.
sometimes. And so it's like,
Yep.
wow, okay. So the idea that we can cultivate a way of
Yep.
being that is not
Hmm.
dependent on our circumstances,
Yep.
can cultivate a way of being that is also not dependent upon, I'm going to say, the natural impulses that
Okay.
might be an undercurrent
Hmm.
with, the chemistry that we have at the time. Right. So
Yep.
for you, it was depression. In my life, it is family of alcoholism. And I, for a
Yep.
long time, didn't think that was my problem. And then I got to be 40 and I went, oh, I really, I think this is really a problem. And I didn't want it to be a problem, but, then
Yep.
I, had to say, okay, I think this is a problem. And now, right. And then the idea that in United States culture, it is so goal driven. It is so
Hmm.
achievement driven. It is so
Hmm.
external reward driven
Okay.
that part of what we're talking about here with Cultivate Wins, win or learn, is also where is the internal satisfaction and where do we learn to take care of ourselves and our own happiness, not from a selfish perspective, but so that we can actually be of service in
Yeah.
a bigger way to our relationships, to the higher power of our understanding, as we say
Yep.
in recovery, and potentially then also to the people we serve in our business, to our communities, right? To actually be a servant leader, there is
Yeah.
a certain internal work, right? In recovery, we say it's an inside job.
Yeah.
Once you get the inside job done, right, then, and one of the best ways to do that, which you actually talked about early on, you would come home and say, well, what could I do, right, to win in my marriage and make the right decision? You took your attention off yourself and you were of service.
Yep. Yep.
And that is part of a formula,
Yeah.
right? For being able to cultivate is to not be too self-centered and not too selfish and not too greedy and all the things that are, if we really want to go down the philosophy rabbit hole for a moment, right? You can be driven by ego, or
Yep.
you can be driven by what might be called a higher calling or a higher self, or something that isn't just mental.
And let's be very clear too that it's not one or the other. The fact is that multiple things can be true at the same time. I know that some people say, you've got to take care of yourself or you can take care of others. Okay. So here, great. Put on a life jacket before you help other people, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Why am I saying blah, 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 and I'm downplaying that? Because I don't negate that there's some truth to that. But I also know that as individuals, there are going to be certain individuals that for true healing and for true ability to move forward to a better place, that's going to be a key ingredient. But there are others of us that was actually, for some reason, I'm not going to claim to understand it today. I
Yeah.
almost don't care that much about it right now, personally, for me, is
Yeah.
that that was not helpful to me. My survival was based on getting away from myself and saying, I need something I can do right now that will bring value to someone else.
Hmm.
I won't end things for me because I have some work to do for someone else.
Hmm. Hmm.
I needed that.
Yes, I hear you.
Needed that.
Hmm.
Okay. So both can be true, sometimes simultaneously, and one can be more important at a certain time.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't want to negate anybody's journey and what's important to them at this time, but also understanding that more than one thing can be true at one time. And during different stages of your journey, that may switch.
Hmm.
That's okay.
Agreed.
Absolutely okay.
Right, because as a human, we have a brain package. I refer to it often, right, as a machine
Yeah.
in a box that we have to carry around, and we have an intuition and a knowing, and
Mhm.
then we can be influenced, educated, guided, right,
Yeah.
both by a knowing and by the forces around us, whether that be in the books that we read, whether that be in the therapy, the coach, the friends, the family members, right, who
Yep.
offer us suggestions. That can help to guide, all right, which one is right for me, and that can change over time.
100%. And your influences, what actually works for you at one point can look so different literally days later, but sometimes years later. I would say that, and those that don't know me well and stuff like that, I mean, come on, I'm a bookaholic. I love my books, man. I mean, they're like my treasures, okay? But I also graduated from school, and it's almost like it was a game to me. How can I graduate without knowing how to really read?
Amazing.
Sometimes you're just dumb as a kid, okay? Sometimes I'm dumb as an adult. But the fact is, it was almost like a game to me. And my wife knows this to be true because she had already been with me a number of years, okay? I could fake it, but my comprehension and reading and everything else like that, come on, there were junior high kids that could do this way better than I could.
Oh, and you have totally flipped the switch on
Okay.
that.
And now my books, it is the source that I go to because I see everything. And this is key for me. And I would say anybody listening to this, if there's anything you could walk away with, stop seeing things as special or as gifts or as blessings or anything. Everything you look at, find a way to see it and treat it as a learnable skill.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I treated and started seeing peace and contentment and joy and gratitude and compassion and empathy as nothing more impressive than any other skill that I was trying to learn. They're
Hmm.
learnable skills. And then the beautiful thing was, once you learn those skills, I could integrate those into my business models. I could integrate those into my personal relationships. I wanted concepts to build everything on that was just as applicable personally as it was professionally.
Yes.
I, to me, and I've had these conversations with quite a few people where it's, there's a certain version of them when they're at work, and then there's a different version when they're in their personal life. And for me, and again, maybe they have the power to do that. For me,
Yeah.
that's exhausting. To have to be one version of me and then flip a switch, to flip these switches just gets exhausting. I just wanted to be one consistent human. Who I am sometimes is who I am all the time. Okay. So
Yeah.
I was looking for to build businesses and to build relationships on core concepts and principles that could be the same.
Yes,
That was crucial to me because I believe this fatigue is a real thing.
it is.
Okay. So anything that creates a little extra energy out of me and can cause that exhaustion, like flipping switches and shoot, now I'm in this moment. I got to think this way. And no, I just want to think one consistent way. It feels almost effortless because I only have one mode.
Right. Because you're authentic. So let's unpack that a little bit here. So part of what you're also describing about being one person at work and one person at home
Mhm.
was the success model,
Yep.
probably from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yep.
Maybe once we got into the 2000s, maybe not so much, started to evolve over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But depending on the history buffs or the age of the people listening to this, right? That was the success formula. You put on a face and a uniform, showed up at work, went home, did whatever you did, became whoever you were. You had two lives.
Yeah.
But authenticity has become fashionable. And I think also out of the fatigue, the disease, the stress, right? And thank goodness the new generations that really don't want to tolerate that. And so we salute you. We thank you, right, for letting us be who we are all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so now, then, what does that look like to build these concepts into the way we run our businesses?
Mm.
So I think this is an opportunity for us to also now dive into you. And you and I met, I believe, in person for the first time in
Florida.
January of
Yeah. Yeah.
2020,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right before the pandemic shut down, at
Yeah.
the NAR ESP conference, where I
Yeah.
believe I got to hear you speak twice. And I do physically remember the top of my head blowing off during at least one of those presentations, saying, wow, I have never heard anyone look at transaction management, process management, participation in being able to look at time and activity. I have never heard anyone look at it and manage it the way you have. And so we have been fast friends ever since, because I'm like, wow, you have to hear David. Like I have to expose this to the world. I felt compelled. So I think particularly now with all the things that we can't control
Okay.
in life and in the economy, we can't control the client reaction. We can't control what's going to happen in the lawsuits, right? In the industry, like we can't control tariffs, like we can't control all these things. But you have developed some ways of looking at how and implementing how can we bring these six components, right? Peace, contentment, joy, gratitude, compassion, empathy. Did I get them all?
Yeah.
Right? Into, well, how do we set up our calendar?
Yeah.
How do we set up the expectations we set with the agents that we serve, with the clients that we serve, so
Yeah.
that you really can be this person throughout your day, your week, your year?
Okay.
So, talk a little bit, if you will, about the application of
Yeah.
that into real estate businesses.
Okay. So let's talk about real application. Okay. Because if we talk about real application, one of the first things that we have to do to apply is we have to have clarity on definitions.
Okay.
So I'm just I'm just going to use one example here on one of those six words: peace, contentment, joy, gratitude, compassion, and empathy. Okay. Now, most people who hear me talk or see my graphics and all these other kind of things that are around is usually it's going to say peace, contentment, joy, gratitude, and compassion. Okay. But to me, compassion and empathy live together. So I'll
Yeah.
say six here. Okay. So let's just talk about joy and let's get real clear on definitions, what I mean by joy. because you have to know how it's defined to know what the application even looks like.
Okay.
Okay. And this is super, super important to me. Hopefully it'll bring value to someone else. It is not my job to bring you joy. It is not my job nor my ability to bring my wife joy.
Mm.
That's not what I mean by joy. I'm not here to bring my customers joy. That takes a lot of ego to think I have control on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, what the frick do I mean by joy then? Okay. I believe, first of all, the phrase self-awareness is my freaking superpower is something I say on a regular basis, out loud and to myself.
Yeah.
Okay. So to be freakishly self-aware, whether you're talking about yourself, you're talking about your spouse, you're talking about your vendors, your lenders, your closers, your whoever, whether you're talking about your buyers, whether you're talking about your sellers, whether you have a team and you have admin, you have a TC, you have a listing. It is not your job to bring them joy. It is your job, and you have the power to be freakishly self-aware as what has an opportunity to steal their joy.
Mm.
This is
That
not
you have
about
control
bringing
over.
anybody joy. It's about being aware of what has an opportunity to steal someone's joy. So let's use the most ridiculously obvious example in real estate. NAR, National Association of Realtors, runs the same frickin' survey forever and a day. At least they have since I've been in business since 97. And that is, they ask every buyer and seller, what's your biggest disappointment with your agent? And it's the same answer every time. It's always been the same answer. It is lack of,
Communication.
right? I don't even have to finish it. Everybody knows what it is. Come on, it's not a secret.
You can Google it.
It's almost stupid obvious, and it's true. Okay. So here's the deal is what could have been an important, possibly joyful.
Yes.
Anybody who thinks that every transaction is meant to be joyful is kidding themselves. People lose family members and have to split a property and get rid of a property. You think that's joyful? That's
Yeah,
not
get
joyful.
divorced and yeah,
Okay?
there are
But
hard reasons.
but the fact is they have an opportunity to experience that transaction at a certain level. And lack of communication has the ability to rob them of that experience
Yes,
and give them
wonderful
a
example.
different experience, an experience of anger, confusion, depression, everything else like that. It is your job to be hyper aware of what has an opportunity to steal that joy. In my relationship with my wife, okay, I'm not saying that I have total control to bring her joy or not, but are you kidding me? I have self-awareness and I better have self-awareness if I actually, okay, well,
For
we
all
won't,
these years.
but the fact is that I should be self-aware to be aware of what has the opportunity to rob her of her joy, steal her joy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It could be big things, it could be little things. Now, practical application.
Right.
If I know it has an opportunity to steal that buyer or seller's joy, lack of communication, now I have a place to start for real application. Go, what would a system look like? So when they leave a transaction, not only did they not experience that, but it would be impossible. And I mean impossible. I mean that word literally. It would be impossible. Can you live at that level that it's impossible for them to answer that survey with lack of communication?
Right. Then what would that look like?
Okay. So now we're talking about real application here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what I mean by these concepts are just as powerful to me about my marriage as they are when I'm developing a system for contract to post close and how that affects not just, I know a lot of times we're thinking about our buyers and sellers. Okay. So the buyers and sellers, what would have an opportunity to steal their joy? Now, if I don't put systems in place that would negate that as even a possibility,
Right.
why would I put that in place? Because I have compassion and I have empathy for them. And I'm freaking grateful that they're even willing to consider us to serve them. And here's the deal is if I don't figure out how to put a system in place, how are they going to truly, and I mean truly experience peace and contentment?
Without that.
Okay. So now next level. Okay. And some people say that what I'm saying is going to be very hard. I just disagree. And that's okay. We could disagree.
Oh, you have personal
And
experience.
okay, it's my experience. I had to learn how to do this
Mhm.
too. Okay. It's a journey. Okay. So the next stage is this. This ain't just about my buyer and seller. It's never going to be just about my buyer and seller. It's never going to be about their buyer and seller. Here's the deal is what a lot of people do is to make sure that the customers that we put systems in place that isn't even capable to steal their joy for lack of communication. We put systems in place that now steals the joy of my admin that have to perform the system.
Mhm.
So how do I build the system so that it also now doesn't do the opposite where, okay, we're going to remove that thing that has the opportunity to steal the joy from our customer, but our admin's just going to have to suffer with it, how that's done. And so now I'm stealing their opportunity of enjoying the job that they do. How do we build systems so I'm not robbing my team's ability to experience peace and contentment? Why? Because I have freaking compassion for them and I have empathy for them.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for them. This is not a win all, lose. No, not in
Right.
any way, shape, or form. So the whole thing that you're very aware of, but maybe the audience isn't, is that everything based on our system is based on a 5x5. So the whole 5x5. In fact, I'll just quickly
Please.
pop it up on the screen here so everybody can see it. This is what it is, okay? And it's everything that we build has to be scalable, duplicatable, freakishly predictable. Anybody who says proactive to me, I want to puke. Okay. To me, the word proactive is so negative. It's just so misunderstood. And so I'll give you my translation of proactive. Proactive means this. You are still being reactive, just doing earlier in the process. I
Yeah,
don't even understand how
it's
that's
progress, but it's not there.
okay. Maybe it's moving in the right direction, but that's not impressive. Okay. So we want to be proactive. So you want to be reactive sooner? Okay.
I
I
know.
just am not that impressed by that. I want to be freakishly predictable. Okay. So the next thing is, and these next two are very, very important because I think they get misunderstood. Just like I think what I meant by joy gets misunderstood. They think when I say joy that somehow I'm building systems that are bringing joy. No, I'm being hyper aware of what has the opportunity to steal everybody's joy. And then we put things in place that's not even possible. Okay. So same thing with effectiveness and efficiency. I think everybody wants to be more efficient. Get over it. Being efficient is so freaking overrated. It's not even funny. Okay. And those that know me know that I can probably in 40 hours get more work done than everybody. That's not because I'm efficient. That's because I'm freakishly effective. Okay. So let's just use an agent's admin as an example. Okay. If that agent's admin is supposed to follow up with the lender, you can do it in a way where that admin constantly will say, I don't know, I've reached out to the lender 8 times and I'm still trying to get an answer. Okay. You can be upset with the lender all that you want, but my question is this. How would you reach out to the lender and what would it look like if the way you reached out to them was more effective? Okay. Because if I am working on 20 files as an admin and I got to reach out to each lender 8 times, what if I was just more effective and I reached out in such a specific way that I always got the answer the first or second time? Worry less about being efficient because your way of doing efficiency is I'm going to quick send them an email. Okay, but you're not getting answers back.
Right.
What would that system look like if you were freakishly over the top effective? So you always got the answer the first 1 or 2 times. If you worry about becoming effective, you almost always, almost without exception, will become more efficient.
Mhm.
Everything that you do, focus on asking yourself and auditing, is that effective? Could it be more effective? And
Mhm.
then the goal is anything that you want to become more effective, don't think you're going to go from here to here overnight. We just measure everything based on 30%, 30% per quarter. So how would we become 30% more effective or more efficient over the next 3 months? We're willing to have humility. Now, that's the next superpower I'm going to talk about. I think
Yeah.
self-awareness is a freaking superpower. I think humility is a freaking superpower. Okay.
Agreed.
Humility in this is that it's okay to say, I do want to get somewhere, but it may take me a little while. Have a little humility. I know that we're working with D's, high D's and drivers and all this other kind of garbage, and they want it changed yesterday, not even tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. But the fact is some of these things is going to be a bit of a journey and a little bit of trial and error. Okay. But also humility that there might be someone who's already figured that out. Go get some freaking help. Okay, those types of things. So when I talk about the 5x5, scalable, duplicatable, frequently predictable, effective, and efficient, effective over efficient, and everything that we build that is based on those things has to create for both myself and everybody we interact with. That includes your team members, your vendors, your customers, yourself. That it produces peace, contentment, takes into consideration what has the opportunity to steal someone's joy, and is fully informed by gratitude and compassion. And then what we do is we audit it every quarter, our systems. And is everything that we are auditing and looking at, is it informed by, filtered through, and audited against those 5x5 principles? Pretty simple. And what I love about those principles, I just had a coaching client say this to me yesterday too. And I say it all the time, but this time it came out of their mouth. They said, I just want to let you know, because we've been coaching maybe 3 months, that your core concepts and principles are now bleeding into my marriage. And so I did exactly what you did. I started laughing, and she goes, trust me, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It's just not something I expected.
Winning because they're learning.
Okay. So I'll stop screen sharing, but I hope that helps.
Yes.
I hope that helps. So, and I'm kind of freakishly over the top about practicality.
Yes.
I want to talk about things that I'm not very much a theory person. These things have been
Where you apply
applied.
your theories. These
are things that have been applied thousands and thousands and thousands of times. The last thing I'd share about this, I'm going to go into one more biblical concept. Forget whether it's spiritual or not, people. It's just the fact is sometimes there's some stories that have lasted thousands and thousands of years for a freaking reason.
that are helpful.
It's a pretty helpful. Okay. So what I want to say about that 5x5 is this. I believe that one of the keys to team success, and when I say team, apply that to your real estate team, apply it to your marriage. I don't care. Okay?
Family.
Team. Okay. Who I am sometimes, who I am all the time. So here's the deal is in the Bible, and you asked me to throw out a verse the first time, so I'll do it again. Genesis 11:7. Go look it up. Okay. So this one is probably more than a couple of thousand years old because it's Genesis. Okay. The deal is what they talked about was this, is there were all these people and they were building this tower. Tower of Babel is what we usually hear it as, okay? Notice the word Babel. Okay, so Tower of Babel. And they wanted to make this tower as tall as they could, which takes a lot of effort, a lot of organization, a lot of unity to make this really, really happen. And they wanted to build it as high as they could so that they could worship other gods and blah, 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 blah. Okay? But come on, that doesn't happen without organization and communication and true unity of purpose. Now go listen to the rest of the story. The rest of the story is obviously God's not happy that they're building this and that they're all unified, that they are building this and they are unified for the purpose of building it to reach out to other gods. He doesn't love that. And he certainly knows that the key to their success is their unity. That's the key. How did he get rid of any unity that he had? He struck them with different tongues. He gave every single one of them a different language. If you don't have a unified language, you can't communicate to a unified goal. Mm-hmm. Unified language matters.
Vocabulary.
Meaning, language,
clarity,
unified. Yes. So what we do on our team and everybody who's worked with me for years now is going to be this. We have a unified language. What is it? It's the 5x5. There is no hierarchy on using this language. You can use it with the owner of the organization or you can use it with anybody else. So if I ask someone, let's implement this. Come on, a lot of leaders, come on, we're idea of the moment people, idea of the week people, idea of the month. People get freaking exhausted with all the ideas we got, okay? But here's what we know. If they're exhausted, they're confused, they're whatever with whatever I'm giving them, they know this. They don't have to ask for permission on this. This is just understood. We have a unified language, unified vocabulary. All they have to do is go, David, I love it. I'm excited about it. I have one question. And I'm already like, oh, frick. Because I already know what's coming at me. It's the words I put in their mouth. Okay. I already know what's coming. It's one of those 10 words. They're going to say, I love it. Looks scalable, looks duplicatable. It's freakishly predictable. That's awesome. Even looks fairly effective. I have one question. It doesn't, it doesn't look like it's as efficient as maybe it could be. They can question me on anything just by using any one of those words. Any one of those words. Okay? There is no hierarchy on this vocabulary. And here's what they have to do. Can you help bring clarity to me on how it meets that standard of efficiency? Now, sometimes I can't. I was just so excited about everything else. Okay, but there's other times I can, and I can bring clarity. And what I notice is you wouldn't have asked that if I would have explained it right in the first time. If I would have actually talked about it in full and brought true clarity. And I can say, you know what? At first glance, I can see why you would ask that. Because here's the thing is, what you are doing is going to require more work up front. Okay. But the fact is, it's going to stop about 7 emails along the way from contract to post close, which in the end isn't even just going to save us time. It's going to make us freakishly more effective and more efficient. And they're like, oh, frick, I'll do that more work up front all day long if that's the case.
That's the payoff.
Now, let's prove it out because I don't like to live in theory. I just don't. It's just kind of not my thing. Okay. I might create in theory, but I'm all about application. And then after application, way more important, is the audit of the application. What's the audit? Was it effective? Did it really meet all of our 5x5? Now, if it's found to be effective, we probably just became more efficient too. Okay, so now same thing. They have something that they want to do. They want to implement. I love it. Great, fantastic. Here's one question I have. I see how changing this system certainly removes something that has been stealing your joy, but it seems to be missing an element that will now convert it. We may be stealing our agents that we're serving. It may steal some of their joy because they feel like they're not in the loop or whatever it is. How would we achieve both of those things?
Great question.
Okay, so the deal is that we have a unified language and nobody has to be afraid of anybody in the organization because we already know what the words are.
Yeah.
You don't have to come up with a creative way to talk to your leader. Why hasn't that leader set a standard for what are unified vocabulary and languages that anybody could use with anybody? Okay, so I love that Tower of Babel, that the way that he totally destroyed their level of unity was by giving it says that they struck them all with different tongues, so they all spoke different language, and it says right after that, they dispersed amongst the rest of the world. So as soon as they couldn't communicate anymore, there was no reason to be together, and they all dispersed.
Yeah, broke apart.
Yeah, and I don't care whether someone believes that as a true story or not. I don't care if it's just an analogy. It's a freaking amazing point. Okay, and I'll take it. I'll take it all day long. So unified language. Okay, so let's go back to the very, very beginning of our call. My story, Cultivate wins. I have been looking since I was basically in junior high. I was struggling with depression. High school, it was just that I could be here tomorrow. I might not be here tomorrow. Yeah. After high school, I was in the darkest place. I mean, it was a horrible place. And then I started reading all those books and everything, and I started to find my vocabulary. And I will say this, when you find your vocabulary, know this, if you speak it, whether you want it to or not, it comes out one hole and it goes right back into another hole. It just does. It's a loop. It is a freaking loop. Okay. And I'm telling you, it informs you all day long. So choose your vocabulary carefully because it informs you all day long.
Yeah. Your mind is listening.
100%. 100%. Okay, the power of those words is just crazy. So to say I'm fairly purposeful on some of my language might be an understatement, but it's a major ingredient for me for that peace and contentment that's so important to me.
This has been so great. So I know there are people who may be listening who think, well, sure, that's fine for him, but that can't happen in my business, or that can't happen with my team, or that wouldn't happen in my family. And I just
Fight
ask
me.
you to
Let's
be
go.
open. I just ask you to be open because this wasn't always true for David.
No,
Right? It was cultivated, it was learned, and then it took concepts into vocabulary, into depth, into application, into implementation, right? And so I want people to be able to learn more about you. So they go to cultivatewins.com.
absolutely they could. Absolutely. So if you went to cultivatewins.com, just know this is that I work with a lot of real estate teams, brokers, real estate software. I do a lot of consulting for them. A lot of the software that a lot of people probably listening to this, a lot of the software companies are might be working with me and stuff like that. And I am looking for places in those software that has an opportunity to steal people's joy and everything in their work environment and everything else like that. That particular site, cultivatewins.com, is more devoted to a lot of the TC community. Don't mistake that as that's the only people I serve. I do that because of this. I love you agents. I've been an agent. I've been a broker. I've been all that. And I think you guys know more than anybody that if you want coaching, you want help, you want consulting, come on, there are people coming out of your ears that are willing to go ahead and raise their hand for that and say, I'll be your coach, I'll be your consultant. I think that the admin community has not had that same luxury.
Yes.
Okay. And so, although I serve both, I honor the fact that one has already been advertised to death to agents. Okay. And one really hasn't. So, a lot of the focus on that Cultivate Win site might look like it's TCs. But if you're a broker, you're an agent, you're anything, and you think that I might be able to bring value, you can still message me right through that same site. Uh,
Yes.
but it has an audience on that site for a reason, and it's because I think it's the people that have been ignored in this industry. That's the only reason why that site looks the way that it does.
Well, and you have such a way to contribute, right? Which then serves the agents and serves the brokers and serves those
Yeah.
small business owners
Yeah.
because this operational infrastructure is the lifeblood, which is also for Cambium, right? That we named our company because
Yeah.
Cambium is the layer underneath the bark of a tree that allows the tree to
Yeah.
grow and thrive throughout its lifetime.
Yeah.
Operations is that under a sales function.
Yeah.
Transaction coordinators, administrative assistants, marketing coordinators, listing coordinators, all those positions are underneath the sales function so that agents can have great customer service, consistency, reach their goals, whatever that might be. But to build a culture and have systems, and systems defined in several ways, right? Actual workflow, actual tools, and then the communication on the team that you can help people design that and put that into great practice. And for
Yeah.
that, I am eternally grateful to you.
There is lots, if you guys haven't noticed, there's a lot of freaking levels of mutual respect on this call. Certainly I have tapped Kathleen on the shoulder and said, any chance you're willing to do a video with me on our YouTube channel? So I've
Yeah.
got some over there of her as well, because I love what her input and I love what she has to share. And more importantly, just because I've gotten to know her over the years, I love the heart and the intention behind what she's sharing. And she knows that I love and appreciate that. So
I
anything she
do,
needs
because
from me, she can reach out. She knows that.
thank you, I do. And to know that the real estate industry is evolving and that there is hope that we can have more peace, contentment, joy, gratitude, compassion, and empathy inside the industry and inside the way we function in the industry. And for that, I hold the vision and have resources.
And trust me, every one of those things you just listed, see and treat them as learnable
Yeah.
skills.
So win or learn is the success habit, and Cultivate Wins is a wonderful resource to help put that into action. Thank you, David. I
Tons
appreciate
of love
it.
to you. Tons of love to anybody else watching this. Take care,
Yes.
guys.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.